The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Wow. I don't know what to say when it comes to the beginning of the 13th episode here of Crossed Flags. I'm Steve West. That's Matt Nicholson. It's not like anything happened in the last few days. I mean, it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, somewhat quiet, yeah. Well, a little quieter than normal,
And if you believe that, I'm going to sell you a nice bit of beachfront property for the Pacific Ocean in Utah.
I was thinking New Mexico.
New Mexico might be a little too close. Hey, welcome into what will be something of a busy, but we're going to try and skim over some things edition of Crossed Flags here. Episode number 13. Lucky? Do you see the shirt that I'm wearing here? We'll get back to that whole situation in a minute. Indy 500, Coca-Cola 600, Formula One in Monaco, all three of them are tentpole races for their respective series, Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR Cup Series specifically. All of them are what they call crown jewel races. And none of them without drama. We're going to get deeper into the Coca-Cola 600 drama a little bit later. Mm-hmm. We will also deal with a little bit of the Indy 500 drama. We'll mention the Formula One drama. A lot of people have been complaining about the fact that Formula One seems to be follow the leader. Well, Monaco kind of proved it. Because for the first time in its 71-year history,
yes,
the exact starting 10 was the finishing top 10. Nobody could pass.
No, they couldn't. Unless you were an Alpine car and you played pinball on lap one.
Yeah. There you go. That was really about it. So That's our touch on the whole Formula One situation at Monaco. We'll get back to the Sunday racing in a minute because then came Tuesday.
Which trumps Sunday by tenfold.
By a big, big margin, yes. And we'll get into the aftermath of it here in a moment. First things first, we're going to show you the statement that was released by the fine folks over at Stewart Haas Racing come Tuesday afternoon. And we have been mentioning it here on this particular show and our weekend show that there has been a lot of talk about them selling off a charter, maybe two, maybe they selling off the whole organization. We didn't know. Joint statement from Tony Stewart and Gene Haas, co-owners of Stewart Haas Racing, as I read it, like you are going to see it on the boards behind us. Quote, "We've made the difficult decision to close Stewart Haas Racing at the conclusion of the 2024 season. It's a decision that did not come easily, nor was it made quickly." Here's the important paragraph, and we'll probably stop after this one and the next one. "Racing is a labor-intensive, humbling sport. Requires unwavering commitment and vast resources with a 365-day mindset to be better than everyone else. It's part of what makes success so rewarding. But the commitment needed to extract maximum performance while providing sustainability is incredibly demanding, and we've reached a point in our respective personal and business lives where it is time to pass the torch." You can read the rest of it, obviously, by just pausing this podcast and reading it on your own. There's a reason why I'm going to stop it right there, because that is effectively what we have been thinking over the last couple of weeks, that this has been kind of bubbling to the surface. Tony Stewart's got his hands on a whole lot of things. He owns a lot. He owns Tony Stewart Racing, which has a dirt team side of it, has the NHRA side of it. He owns two racetracks. He has owned a couple of series, be it the Superstar Racing Experience, the All-Star Dirt
All-Star Circuit of Champions.
All-Star Circuit of Champions, which he, by the way, recently sold that as well. He understands that to do what needs to be done at the top level of racing, you need to be there. And here's the thing that I know about Tony Stewart. When he came over and he joined up with Gene Haas, remember, Gene Haas started Haas CNC Racing in 2002. and it was a back marker.
No, big time.
It was a back marker operation. It had one win in the Craftsman, what we now call the Craftsman Truck Series, way back in the early days. Had a little bit of nibbling success in the Xfinity Series, but in the Cup Series, it was a back marker.
Yep.
And then Joe Gibbs Racing decided to move from Chevrolet to Toyota, and everyone said, how can we get Tony Stewart back with Chevrolet? So they put him together with Gene Haas. The two of them worked out the deal, and in 2009, boom, Stewart Haas Racing. And they met with success very quickly. The All-Star race that year, Tony Stewart got Gene Haas his first ever Cup Series win in the All-Star race. And then later on in the year at Pocono, he got him an actual points race win.
Yep.
And they went on. And in 2011, Tony Stewart becomes the first driver since Alan Kulwicki in 1992 to be the first driver owner to be a Cup Series champion. A couple of years later, they bring in Kevin Harvick, and in his first year with the team, boom, he wins the Drivers' Championship. So in rapid succession, in 5 years, 2 titles, untold numbers of wins between Smoke, Ryan Newman, and then Kevin Harvick. And then you bring in some other drivers, and you expand out to 4 teams eventually, and you still have success, although you're not really title winning at that point in time. You're still winning races, and you're still competing for it. Until last year. Last year, suddenly the team just didn't have it. No wins whatsoever. Not a single win in the organization. So they decided we're going to do an entire changeover. And they went from the old Stewart Haas Racing logo to the logo that you're about to see on the background right here behind us.
Yep.
And we thought, okay, they're doing a rebrand. They're bringing in new drivers because Eric Almirola and Kevin Harvick left. Clint Boyer had come and gone. And now all of a sudden, we've got a bunch of new drivers over there. The only carryover really was Ryan Preece and Chase Briscoe. Half the team suddenly changed. But if you look back at the team from, say, 2020, nobody's the same. Radical changeover at this operation. For better or worse, we don't know. It seems like short-term for worse. But Tony starts to get more interested in doing some other things. Again, he's got his hands on a whole lot of other stuff. And Gene Haas is suddenly not only involved in a multi-million-dollar business, Haas CNC Automation, but he's got a Formula One team that has taken up certainly a whole heck of a lot of money, and one would presume a good amount of time, especially if you happen to be watching Netflix's Formula One Drive to Survive.
Considerable time.
Watch, what was the Haas F1 based one? Was that episode 3 or 4 of the most recent season?
I think it was 4.
Think about how much time Gene Haas and then team principal Gunther Steiner were spending on the phone with each other.
Considerable.
And that's just before and after the race, on the race day itself. That's not counting Monday through Friday. So you have to imagine that it was even more amped up. So all of these things are taking Gene Haas away from the Cup Series and NASCAR operation. All of these things are taking Tony Stewart away from the NASCAR operation.
Laying everything at the feet of Greg Zipadelli.
And while Greg Zipadelli certainly knows what he's doing and he'll have no problem finding a job next year, it's a little too much for him because he's not the owner.
Agreed.
He's the team GM. That's his job. There's only so much you can do in that role. Ownership needs to be very heavily involved. You think about it. You look at, right now, Fox coverage of NASCAR and the Cup Series, and you look at Hendrick Motorsports. Rick Hendrick is there almost every weekend. You look at Richard Childress Racing. Richard Childress is there almost every weekend.
Joe Gibbs.
Joe Gibbs is there every single weekend.
Justin Marks.
Trackhouse Racing, Legacy MC. You pick the team. By and large, the owner is not that far away.
Right.
And if the owner's not at the track, they are doing something in the background that is helping the team. Tony, unfortunately, is out racing someplace else.
It was laying too much at the feet of Greg Zipadelli and Joe Custer.
Yeah.
And they're only just executives. They're not. Joe Custer is more of your at-the-track version of Gene Haas. Greg Zipadelli is more your at-the-track version of Tony Stewart. Greg Zipadelli is on the competition side of it, like Tony is. Joe Custer from the business side of it, like Gene Haas is. But, unfortunately, I saw this domino starting to teeter over. Mm-hmm. Let's call it that.
The signs were there.
The signs were there last year when that hefty fine was laid on Stewart Haas, and Tony made the quote, "They're about to tick me off. I'm thinking about going to spend my money elsewhere where I'm having more fun."
Yeah.
There's where the domino started going that way.
And that's when you and I probably should have taken that statement a little more to heart, because we were like, oh, he's, I understand it. He's blowing off steam. We kind of dismissed it. We should have taken it more seriously. We'll both admit it.
Yeah, the second part of it, Gene Haas was becoming more peeved, let's use it that way, at this charter agreement, and it keeps dragging and dragging and dragging, and currently still dragging.
Yeah. Although reports did come down earlier today that it seems like NASCAR finally delivered their latest edition or proposal for the charter agreement to the teams today. Finally.
Supposedly. Time will tell.
Yeah.
But the third aspect of it was when you're not going to renew. You're having trouble renewing your deal for Ford, and Ford is not wanting to step up and make something work. And much to my personal surprise, no other manufacturer seemed to want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Nope. They were all just sitting back watching it happen.
I don't know. That was a head scratcher.
Yeah. So here's the deal. If you look at the whole situation, and I've got the stats here on paper, just to make sure I get it right. You go back to 2002, when it was Haas CNC Racing. This team has run 1,100 races. They're approaching 100 wins in Cup Series, or in NASCAR action. They're at 98 right now. They began, of course, the Xfinity Series arm of the operation with 2 cars. Since then, 26 wins there. They do have a Truck Series win, but again, that was before Stewart came into the organization. 80 pole positions, 54 of those in Cup, 3 titles, 2 Cup, 1 Xfinity. This team came in and they made a statement. There's no doubt about it. And they'll be remembered as one of the good ones. Now I'm going to take off something of the media/journalist hat, and I'm going to put on my fan hat. Again, look at the shirt. If you know anything about Cup Series racing, you know this is the number Tony Stewart ran. That's his signature printed onto this shirt. I am a member of the Tony Stewart fan club. Mm-hmm. Just yesterday, I opened up a piece of mail about an hour and a half before the announcement came down that they were shuttering at the end of this year. And they sent me a long sleeve black T-shirt with that logo on the chest and the Stewart Haas Racing logo down the arm. That's now a collector's item.
That's now a relic.
That is now a collector's item.
Mm-hmm.
As a person who has been a fan of Tony Stewart since his rookie year, 1999, I'm just going to flat out say this right now. And no, I'm not going to cuss because I want to try and keep this family oriented. But I'm going to tell you this right now. This sucks. As a fan, this flat sucks. I hate it. Because even when Tony retired from driving, I had a team to root for. I really don't right now. I really don't.
It really does. It does suck because you see a team that goes from 13 wins to 23 wins in 2 years to now key in hand going into the lock to the shop.
Yeah.
That's the bad thing. Kevin Harvick, I heard a quote from Kevin Harvick actually this morning. He honestly, he hit the nail on the head. To see this team, and he invested a lot of time into this team.
He did.
The most success of his career came from inside of those walls, arguably. He said it's very hard to fathom and very hard to get a grasp on within a 6-month time frame, go from forever to forward to for sale.
Yeah.
He said it's unbelievable. Now, the last domino, the last domino that I saw that it was going to happen is when Ford put their support behind Front Row Motorsports as a Tier 1 level Ford program.
Yep.
And you see what it's doing for them right now.
Yeah.
It's paying off.
It is paying off because just before we started recording this podcast at about 2:30 on this Wednesday afternoon, we got official word that Front Row Motorsports has officially entered into an agreement with Stewart Haas Racing. They're going to buy one of the 4 Stewart Haas Racing charters, making them a 3-car full-time team next year. Now, here's the funny part. They've got 2 drivers right now that are running for them, Todd Gilliland and Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell, the senior of the 2, but you might remember Michael McDowell is leaving at the end of this year, and he's going over to Spire Motorsports, and that settles down their 3-charter operation over there at Spire. So now all of a sudden, Front Row Motorsports is in an odd situation of having 3 charters for 3 cars and 1 driver, Todd Gilliland, who technically is not signed to be on this year.
Pretty sure I would expect Gilliland to be retained.
Yes.
For some stability.
I would be very surprised if one of the SHR drivers doesn't find their way over to Front Row.
Dare I say, Xfinity program. That's a possibility.
Could be 2. Certainly 1.
Now, as an organization, I'll back up on something you touched on. As an organization, I will be utterly shocked if this year they don't surpass 100 wins in NASCAR.
Yeah,
better odds laying within Xfinity versus Cup as it stands right now.
But either way, this right here should light a fire under that team. It's going to do one of 2 things. It's either going to kill the morale of this team and they're all going to quit. They're still going to show up to work. They'll still show up to race, but they're really not going to put the effort behind it. Or it's going to galvanize them all, and they're going to want to go out in a blaze of glory. And I'm betting on number 2.
I could see 3 of the 4 wanting to go out in a blaze of glory. I could see 3 of the 4.
Sure. And I think the desire will be there on all 6, including the 2 Xfinity operations.
That would be cars 4, 10, and 14.
Yeah.
Cup side.
Capability is something else entirely. Ryan Preece might catch lightning in a bottle at a short track because that's really his specialty. Of the drivers that are out there, Cole Custer seems ready to get back into Cup. Riley Herbst has been knocking on the door, and him grabbing his first career Xfinity Series win late last year kind of tells me that he's probably closer to ready than he has been ever. And he's gotten some Cup Series rides, and he's proven to be solid, if unspectacular.
In a front row car.
Exactly.
In a front row car, coming off of 4 at Talladega, lap 188, he was legitimately a threat to play a little capture the flag.
Yeah. So Cole Custer and Riley Herbst look ready to come to Cup. Josh Berry proved that he's ready to be in Cup. You got Chase Briscoe, who has a win in Cup Series action. And then there's the story of Noah Gragson, who last year, after all the drama of Legacy trying to figure out a way to get him out of the car and found a reason, a stupid reason, but they found a reason to get him out of the car, has gone through every process that he needed to do, rebounded, got the ride, and he and Drew Blickensderfer, his crew chief, have really gelled.
Tenfold. No pun intended.
The performance on that 10 car is very impressive. So I expect Briscoe, Gragson easily to catch rides. I would imagine Josh Berry won't have much problem finding a ride, especially if you can pair him up with Rodney Childers.
He shouldn't.
If you can keep that driver crew chief pairing going, you shouldn't have any problem whatsoever.
He shouldn't.
No.
Question is, you could say he shouldn't have, but in reality, will it?
Yeah. Because at some point in time, the music's going to come to a stop, and somebody's, and more than likely more than one, are going to be left without a seat. because even though only one charter is spoken for, if we listen to all of the different winds that are blowing, seems like 2311, not 23 by 1, Racing is going to be a massive player for one of those charters. It seems like Trackhouse Racing is going to be a massive player for one of those charters. Trackhouse already pretty much has things settled down because we know that Zane Smith is lent to Trackhouse or to Spire Motorsports right now. Next year, he's not going to be in that car, so he needs a ride. So it seems like Zane Smith probably would get that ride. So that eliminates a seat. 2311 is probably going to go with the driver in the Toyota pipeline, so that eliminates a seat. You see where I'm going here.
That'll be the dominoes that I see getting ready to fall the rest of the way. You've got that Trackhouse seat he was talking about. That'll be Zane Smith's. There will be a partnership formed with Colling and Trackhouse, which virtually already is now. Shane Van Gisbergen will have the 16 car full time. If he keeps progressing like he's doing this year in Xfinity, which he's step by step in these racetracks he's going into completely blind that he's never seen, he's
acquitting
himself very quite well.
Yeah.
And performing quite well. Okay. 2 road courses back to back. Guess what? I'm pushing all of my chips on that 97 car. Okay. Secondly, he'll be 16. All right. Apparently, Chase Briscoe is the lead candidate because he is a Ford development driver, Ford driver.
Yes.
He's a lead candidate to get the 21 car next year.
Which puts Harrison Burton out, but
it's not,
what has Harrison Burton done in the car?
Nothing. It's not a given, but apparently he is the lead candidate according to multiple people.
Sure.
Let's word it that way. Personally, I could see Cole Custer going to front row.
Sure.
Because
taking one of the 2 cars.
Because it's kind of weird for me to say this and actually think about this, but there is a lot of truth behind this. Unless there's another team that develops or another team that forms an alliance with Ford, your lead program in Xfinity in 2025, currently as it sits for Ford Motorsports and Ford Performance, is RSS Ryan Sieg.
That's wild.
Huh?
Either way, Ford's going to be losing a lot out of this because Ford right now, not knowing where that 4th charter will go. Let's presume that Trackhouse gets one, 2311 gets one, and we know Front Row's got one.
2311 will pull Corey Haim.
All right, that's -2 right there. Mm-hmm. Okay, for the Ford camp, that's -2 because 2311's Toyota and Trackhouse is Chevrolet. Mm-hmm. Potentially -3, depending on where that 3rd one goes. And then you eliminate 2 Xfinity Series rides where they already are at a premium. Because if you look, it was Stewart Haas. Last year, it was practically Stewart Haas Racing only.
You had Stewart Haas and RSS that was the Stewart Haas satellite team.
Yeah. And they were they 1 full-time car and a part-time car last year, I think it was?
3.
Okay. Either way. And it wasn't that long ago where really, for all intents and purposes, it was Stewart Haas, and they were it.
Yeah, because Penske went out of the way.
Yep. As soon as Penske went out the door and said, we're no longer going to run Xfinity, Ford had 2 cars in Xfinity, and it was both Stewart Haas cars.
So does Penske revive theirs?
Doubtful.
Does RFK revive theirs? Possible.
Maybe. That seems more likely than Penske.
Yeah, that's more likely than Penske for sure. But Brad Keselowski kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit last night. Somebody quote tweeted Bob Pockris. I kind of hope RFK and Brad Keselowski gets the 4th charter and brings the 60 car back or brings or whatever.
Could it be? Yeah, sure.
Brad Keselowski hit it real back and said, and I quote, "I'm about 30 million short.
Now,
somebody want to start a GoFundMe for me?"
Is that a smokescreen? Maybe. I mean, we've seen stranger things. Mm-hmm. Could be a smokescreen, but Brad Keselowski pretty much wears his heart out on his sleeve. If he tells you he's short, he's short.
Yeah.
And I don't see Penske expanding to 4 cars, especially when we talk about the fact that it looks like right now the new charter agreement more than likely has a provision that's going to start limiting teams to 3 full-time cars, unless you already are grandfathered in Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, and by the way, those of you that want to start throwing dirt on NASCAR, let me give you a couple of names of pretty well-known and successful teams that are no longer running. Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, Bud Moore Engineering, Holman Moody. How about Penny Enterprises, Petty Motorsports, Richard Petty Motorsports? All those names are gone.
Junior Johnson and Associates.
Yep. I just ran tip of the iceberg here. I didn't even look at it hard. We could have gone through a litany of teams that have come in, had success by winning races, maybe even titles, and have left. Mm-hmm. And NASCAR's still around. NASCAR's still rolling. Is it going through a transition phase? Absolutely. Is it going through a situation where people are upset with the way things are going and leaving? Absolutely. That's obvious. But NASCAR continues on. 75, 76 years in. Mm-hmm. And then Sunday, we had a gentleman jump into an Indy car. And
you may have heard of him.
Then all of a sudden, the rains came, and he had to jump back out of the car. Kyle Larson, trying to do the double. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because here's the thing. The double didn't quite work out. 4-hour rain delay in Indianapolis, and for whatever particular purpose, and that's between Rick Hendrick, Zach Brown at Arrow McLaren Racing, and Kyle Larson, and Jeff Gordon, and whoever else is involved in this. But that guy right there decided to run the entire Indy 500 instead of jumping on a plane and going to where his bread is buttered and down to the Coca-Cola 600 to race the NASCAR Cup Series race where he's running for points. This may be a once-in-a-lifetime effort. I don't think so. From what we hear, he signed a 2-year contract. Mm-hmm. It seems like he'll probably be back to try it again next year. Hopefully the weather will be better.
Probably with another Cup driver or two.
Yeah, we're also hearing that. Okay? And what I really want to see still, and I'm going to save this until I'm blue in the face, I want to see an IndyCar driver do the same attempt.
That color blue.
Yeah. I want to see an IndyCar driver do the same attempt. And the guy who makes the most sense to me is driving at Penske. And his name is Joseph Newgarden.
I was thinking different.
Go for it.
Scott McLaughlin.
Either one would be fine by me. Both of them, though, make sense because Penske can put a 4th car out there.
Oh, easy.
Without any problem and within the rules. And either one of them would make a whole heck of a lot of sense. And it certainly would be another interesting sub-story to repair Scott McLaughlin versus one Shane Van Gisbergen, who used to compete against each other down in Australian supercars down under. And at that point in time, Scott was kind of eating the lunch of Mr. Van Gisbergen.
A little bit. The only kicker I see
that would be fun.
The only kicker I see to that is the crossover from Chevrolet to Ford.
I still think it could happen.
Probably could, but we know how picky and how particular Jim Campbell and Chevrolet is.
But if anybody can make that smooth over, it's Roger.
There's
it's
no
the
doubt.
Captain.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But it was Rick Hendrick's decision to leave him in Indianapolis. Rick could have said, hey, let's get on the plane, let's go.
Yeah.
It was Rick's decision because of the time, money, and everything invested into that effort right there. Mm-hmm. Yes, he completed all 500 miles on the lead lap.
Yeah.
But you can't control Mother Nature and you can't beat her.
Nope.
She's undefeated.
The only reason we're going to bring this up is because now we're into the aftermath of this, and a whole lot of people are debating whether or not NASCAR grants Kyle Larson a waiver. At this point in time last week, we were pretty much under the impression that it was all but done. It appears not. Rick Hendrick apparently has either just started on the paperwork but hasn't filed it yet, or has quietly filed it.
Apparently it hasn't been requested and filed yet, but you cannot tell me that he did not already talk to somebody, him, Jeff, or both, talk to somebody and not know that a waiver would be gotten if he stayed and completed all 500 miles, then get to Charlotte, get in the car, and finish the 600. If that wouldn't have been the case, he wouldn't have stayed.
And number two, and this is fan rant number 2 for me. If you honestly believe that Kyle Larson shunned NASCAR for the sole purpose of just wanting to drive the Indy 500, and therefore he doesn't deserve a waiver, what? You are ridiculously off base, because there isn't a driver right now that runs in the Cup Series or the Xfinity Series that doesn't at some point in time get into another ride in some other series and go racing. They all do. They're all getting behind the wheel as much as they can. And NASCAR races once a week in their particular series that they're running for points in. Once a week. That's it. All of them take the opportunity to effectively have a chance to miss a race because of weather, because of an injury. Last year, Alex Bowman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Chase Elliott.
Kyle Busch, 2018?
2019.
2019. Thank you. Kyle Busch, 2019, running the Daytona Xfinity Series race when he's running for points in Cup, gets into an accident that keeps him out of the first, 6-7 races of the Cup Series season, is granted a waiver because of the injury was sustained. Now you say, well, his injury was sustained in racing. Okay. Let's go back to Tony Stewart's injury where he was injured in a sandrail racing accident. And what did NASCAR do? Granted Tony Stewart a waiver.
He broke his back doing that, and then he has his leg broken in a sprint car accident.
NASCAR is not involved in sandrail racing. Tony Stewart is, but NASCAR is not. But yet they granted him a waiver.
Chase Elliott got a waiver.
Chase Elliott
from
last
snowboarding.
year was snowboarding, broke his leg, got a waiver, and completed the year. Didn't make the playoffs, but he was still granted a waiver to where if he otherwise qualified for it, Chase Elliott would have been in the playoffs last year.
He technically got a double waiver because when he got back and he right hooked Hamlin at the 600, he still got a waiver.
So he got 2 of them.
So,
Think about that.
Yeah.
The precedent's been set. This worm, this can of worms, opened worms everywhere. If NASCAR doesn't grant Kyle Larson a waiver,
anarchy.
When it brought so much publicity to both the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600, positive as well.
Highest Indy 500 rating in, 10 years?
Easily.
Okay.
Pure hypocrisy if they don't give it to him.
He gets out of the car. He goes to Charlotte. What naturally do you think Charlotte's rating is going to do?
Zoom.
Straight up.
Yep.
They're going to go up.
And if it hadn't been for the rain coming to Charlotte, who knows what he might have been able to do? Because even Justin Allgaier, once he got out of the car, because Justin Allgaier started the race in the 5 Cup Series car, and he said, when Kyle Larson gets into this car, he's going to be kicking butt, effectively. That's a paraphrase. It's not the direct quote.
And now let me reach over to the bag and get the driver out and start polishing up.
Yep, because then we get into the Coca-Cola 600 itself. As noted, Coca-Cola 600, NASCAR officials were willing to delay the start of it a little bit, depending on Kyle Larson's situation. Well, suddenly Kyle Larson's race is delayed for 4 hours. So they go ahead and start running it. Justin Allgaier's in the car. They get through stage 1. They get through stage 2. Now remember NASCAR rules. NASCAR has a rule that states you get into stage 2 or you get to half the number of laps run and we can consider the race official. So it was lap 260...
249.
249. Lap 249. They bring the cars down pit road because it's sprinkling enough to the point where it's become unsafe.
And lightning was in the 6-mile radius.
Lightning was in the radius. And we've been there. We know. We've been in the PA booth when we've had to tell people lightning's in the area, get out of the grandstands.
When you hear the words stage hey Steve, Matt, go ahead, Eric. Hey, we got a stage 1. We need to announce that. Mm-hmm. Stage 2, stage 3.
Yeah, we're prepared for that as well.
Stage 3, get out.
Stage 3 means we get on the PA system and we tell you, the fan, get out of the grandstands because there's lightning in the area. Mm-hmm. Is lightning going to hit the grandstands? We don't know. And that's why we tell you, get out.
Yep.
Okay. Well, stage 3 came along. Cars were parked on pit road in their pit stalls or wherever they were. I don't know.
Pit boxes.
They were in their pit boxes, all covered up, ready to go.
Which I thought was odd from the word go. I'm going, Normally they stop on pit road in their running order and cover up. They go to the pit boxes.
It's weird.
What are we doing here?
Under red flag conditions, and I don't care what racing series you're talking about, when you red flag a race, can't work on the car.
Nope.
So why park in the pit box? But they did. Matt, you're up.
And they go to dry and pit road. When you start seeing them dry and pit road, you're like, okay, that makes a little bit of logical sense here. 1 hour passes. Hour and a half passes. Rain quits. Air tightens crank up. Jet dryers have yet to crank up. Surface gets dry to a point. Jet dryers are deployed. Go to about 2.5 hours. Okay, we're getting a little progress here. It's about 11 o'clock Central, actually it's more like 10:45 Central, which is closer to 11:45 if I'm not mistaken. Looking, okay, we're making a little bit of headway here. You know, not a few more passes around. We got a raceable track. Fox comes on the air. It was a little bit before 11 o'clock Central. Memory serves me correct because I was very sleepy. And somehow they know Christopher Bell had been declared the winner before Christopher Bell even knew. Due to the time extended of drying the racetrack, humidity, and the possible restart time, we decided to pull the plug. Time out. Time out. Huh? How many times have we seen Daytona in the summer, whether it be July or August, run into the wee hours of Sunday morning?
More than once.
Quite a few, whether it be Xfinity or Cup. Truck hasn't done it all that often. We have me and this fella right here, and I'll just go ahead and say it like it is, thought we were experiencing the gates of hell in Darlington that day. When we get into the track and get into the tower at a little before 10 a.m., the race still hadn't started 12 hours later. That's 10 p.m. I'm going to say it first before I finish my rant. You cannot tell me under any circumstances whatsoever that Fox did not influence pulling the plug on it. Because why would you would go that far, get the track that close, and Joe Gibbs let it slip in the owner's winner's press conference of the owner. We got the 15-minute call. The driver's going to be back to their cars, and then 5 minutes later, they pull the plug. What's wrong with that picture? I don't think Joe Gibbs will say, we did get the 15-minute warning, drivers back to your cars, because and I've gotten the radio transmission, and I've been telling him, you make the call.
Sure.
Drivers back to your cars. We're going racing.
We both experienced that, number one. Number two, of any of the team owners that would be out there, Joe Gibbs would be complaining the most about trying to call the race because, again, Christopher Bell was the guy that was out front when the red flag was shown.
Exactly.
But yet he's willing to admit we all got the 15-minute notice.
And to you people on social media that want to argue with me and tell me that I'm full of you know what, saying that Darlington, the 2019 Southern 500 would like a word about starting late and finishing late, when me and this guy right here was in the tower and saw the sun come up, leaving the racetrack.
Yep.
Shut up.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting in the tower with him, and we know humidity is a factor because we had air conditioner blowing and it looked like we was in the frozen tundra of Green Bay because the window was so fogged up and dew on it. I was having to clean the window for him.
Yeah, he was having to go out during the race and effectively grab whatever he could to try and be a human squeegee so that I could see what was going on the track.
All while listening to a radio of like, hey, stop. Hey, MRN's on, stop. Mm-hmm. Hey,
that's his job.
The race ended at 2:38. I was looking at my phone when the checkered flag fell.
Yeah.
2:38 Eastern.
Now, there is one difference that I will state, because I stated this ahead of time. Before the rains came, NASCAR had gotten to the point where they could make the race official. The 2019 Darlington race, the start got delayed for 4 hours?
About 4.5.
Okay. So that's one, and I'll say it's something, it's not a minor difference, but it's not a major difference. But it is a difference, okay? Yeah, we got well past the halfway. Well, we got past the halfway point this past Sunday night, whereas we didn't even start the race at Darlington in 2019. But
go ahead. I'm gonna give you an excuse that I was given.
Well, and I'm going to give the out on this as well, because as I noted, you can call the race official once you get to stage 2 and/or half the laps or more completed. Mm-hmm. If time was such a major factor for NASCAR, why wasn't that race called once we got to stage 2 and/or just past halfway on the lap counter?
True.
Why?
True.
If time is that big of a deal to NASCAR and to Fox or NBC, really doesn't matter.
There's a caveat to that, because I went and thought back from recent memory. NBC doesn't have a problem running races late. No. Fox does.
Fox suddenly all of a sudden does.
Fox has a problem. NBC doesn't.
No.
Because the late races that we've been a part of,
they've all been NBC.
NBC races. Been in NBC.
And I'll be the first person to tell you this. I actually prefer Fox's coverage, the announcing group specifically, over NBC's. But NBC has kind of come to impress me a little bit because of their willingness to stick with NASCAR and let NASCAR go its natural course. Fox seems to interfere with when the television side of things is going to be going on.
It really
way more.
It really does. But from using humidity,
no, I don't buy the humidity side of it at all.
South Carolina, September, summer.
Yeah.
Daytona Beach, Florida, on the ocean in the summer. In August and July. Your excuse is invalid.
Yeah, sorry, that doesn't work.
And then somebody shares not even 30 minutes after they called it. I saw a lot of gray asphalt.
A lot of light gray asphalt. Light gray asphalt tells us that that's dry. Dark gray asphalt, wet. Light gray, dry. So, Kyle Larson deserves a waiver. Sorry, precedent's been set. They called that way too early.
Too quick.
Sorry, boys. And Stewart Haas Racing is, at the end of the year, no longer in existence. What in the heck?
Cue up taps.
Good night almighty. Where the heck do we go from here? I'm almost afraid, because here's the thing. This roller coaster that we're on suddenly got a lot bumpier. It's going to be a bumpy ride this summer, so pull those straps down tight one more time, boys, because we're about to go racing at high speed in a very turbulent atmosphere.
We are.
Because silly season just got real silly. 3 charters outstanding, 2 of them probably already spoken for, but still. 3 charters still outstanding, and now all of a sudden, some pretty good drivers out there that ain't got a home. We'll keep you updated on it. We'll talk about this a little bit more, obviously, on Saturday's show. Join us, won't you? 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time on CRN Live on YouTube. We'd appreciate it. And, of course, join us next week as we bring you yet another edition of Crossed Flags. And God only knows what's going to happen between now and next Wednesday. We'll talk to you then.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.